Today on Up Front, Republican lawmakers pledge to go big and bold on new reforms. Speaker Robin Vos on the 2017 agenda next on Up Front. Then Democrats' dismal election day. What's their way back at the state and national levels? And does it involve Bernie Sanders-style progressivism? I'll ask state lawmaker and party vice chair David Bowen. Plus, protesting the new president, what the local Latino community is saying about President-elect Trump's plan for deportations.
Covering the issues important to Wisconsin. This is Up Front with Mike Goucher.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome to Up Front. Republicans in both houses of the Wisconsin legislature will return in January with majorities that are now even larger following the November 8th election. One newly reelected leader of the state assembly says there are even bigger and bolder reforms coming. So what's in store? We're asking the Republican Assembly Speaker, Robin Vos of Rochester. Speaker, welcome back to the program.
Thanks, Mike. I always enjoy being here.
So what was Jim Steineke, the number two guy, talking about when he said even bigger and bolder?
So I am so optimistic because for the first time since 1928, Republicans have united control in Washington, which means all of the things that have happened since where Republicans have tried to reform but been stymied in their efforts. I think a lot of the ideas that they've been talking about as far as federalism, bringing things back to the states, block granting, worker training, education, Medicaid, they're going to come back to states all across our country, assuming Paul Ryan and Republicans keep their word, and I think they will, which means that as a state legislator, so often in the past 4, 6, 8 years, we have had to seek permission from the federal government to be reformers, and they've oftentimes said no. So now, with the Trump administration and a friendly Congress, I think we have a real chance in Wisconsin to take the reforms that we have done, which have mostly been we've been able to do because of our state laws, and take the freedom that the federal government will give us and be real reformers for the rest of the country to follow, just like they have on so many other topics.
So in some sense, you're talking about just fundamentally a different way of doing business, conducting the business of government.
I mean, one of the things, let's take an example. I know that President-elect Trump and Speaker Ryan have both talked about repeal and replace for Obamacare. Right. There are an awful lot of citizens who had health insurance prior to Obamacare in Wisconsin with the high-risk sharing pool and other programs that we had. Those all went away. They were innovative, and across the country, they were models for other states. But when Obamacare came in, it was one size fits all, and most of those are swept away. So I'm excited about the chance that when they repeal Obamacare and they look for replacements, they're going to give us the freedom in Wisconsin to say, use the free market, use the principles you know work in one state to make sure that we cover as many, if not more people than Obamacare did.
You and I have talked on this program a number of times about transportation. You and the governor still sort of differ on this in terms of what options should be available. But I want to spend a little time talking about something else that is a priority for many school districts around the state, people who are interested in the University of Wisconsin system. As you sit here today, is there going to be more funding for K through 12 and for the University of Wisconsin system? Do you anticipate that?
I do. So just basic state government, of course, the first draw on our new revenues is always making sure we fully fund health care for the poor. That's required by the federal government. It's an automatic spend. The second draw for me has always been funding for public schools, which is why in the last budget, if you remember, Governor Walker flat funded, zero increase in public schools. Right. The legislature put $200 million in, so we're now seeing that in our schools today. I'm just as optimistic that we're going to continue to fund K-12 education like we have in the past, which is increases in spending over time, continued to try to make sure that they are spending it wisely with reforms. And the university, to their credit, I think their request was only a little over $40 million as an increase. Yeah. So I am going to do everything that I am able to do to make sure that we fund that request for the university. Now, continuing to also ask them to do things, based on performance and continue to graduate students in hopefully at least 4 years, if not less, to be innovators and to do things that I think are common sense, like encourage free speech on campus, a lot of those ideas. But as far as the funding side, I want to do as much as we can to make sure the university and public schools get the resources they need. And partly it comes down to where the economy is. We're waiting for those numbers from the administration and from our fiscal bureau to be able to know the resources we have to invest going forward. Because don't forget, every session Republicans have been in charge going back to 1994, we have also tried to reduce the tax burden for our state. So that's also a priority. So we've got to find a way to balance out these competing interests and continue to move Wisconsin forward.
Let's talk a little bit about early voting. You said before the election that you wanted to take a look at early voting in Wisconsin again after the election. What do you want to change about early voting?
Well, obviously, it's a system that is wildly popular, so we're not going to eliminate early voting. That's never been our intention. But when you go to vote on Election Day, we have standardized hours. You start at 7 o'clock in the morning in the smallest town, the biggest city. You ended at 8 o'clock at night. Biggest town, smallest city, same exact thing. So why would we not have some kind of a standardization of hours all across the state for early voting? So it's easy to understand that if you live in the city of Milwaukee or the city of Burlington or some rural township, you know these are the hours that you have an ability to go and early vote just like on Election Day. I don't think that's anti-democratic. I think it's actually better for the system, so no matter where you live, you have the same chance to vote.
Multiple sites for early voting? That's you don't want.
I'm open to that, sure, yeah. I mean, the goal is to increase turnout, but also do it in a way that's fair. You know, some people have been critical of voter ID. We now have an election which huge turnouts happened with very few reported problems, and
you don't
most
think
of those
it
were solved.
resulted in lower Democratic turnout this
Not
time
at all.
around?
I mean, I haven't seen any data that shows that that's true. In fact, I think many of the reasons that people didn't turn out wasn't because they didn't have an ID. It's because they had a flawed candidate who did almost nothing to inspire that Democratic base. Even my Democratic friends have admitted that that was their main motivating problem, that they didn't have a candidate who really drove turnout. It wasn't about an ID.
On early voting, one final question. Do you think Republicans pushed too far? Was early voting, some of the changes that were made to early voting that were stopped by the court, did you go too far in the first round of changes to early voting?
I fully supported the last round, so those are still working their way through the courts. But you know, I obviously want to make sure that I am open-minded to say, hey, if there are things that we could do better to make sure that we continue to maintain a system where people are fully engaged, but do it in a way that balances out everyone's opportunity to participate equally, I am open to whatever ideas that hopefully we have to do if the court rules there's a problem, and also at the same side to make sure that we have that standardization that should be happening in every possible way.
Speaker Robin Vos, one of the leaders on the Republican Party in Madison. Thanks very much for being with us today.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it.
2017, of course, will be a budget year for the state with big decisions to be made. We're just talking about them. Our editorial partner, WizPolitics.com, will cover it from start to finish. You'll find that coverage on the budget blog of WizPolitics.com. Coming up next, Democrats suffered losses up and down the ticket on Election Day. I'll ask a Democratic lawmaker and party official about their way back. And why didn't more Milwaukee Democrats turn out for Hillary Clinton? That's when Up Front continues.
Up Front with Mike Goucher, brought to you by the American Transmission Company and the Wisconsin Corn Growers Association.